There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to another Friday Reads, and got lots of stuff to tell you this week. Two highlights of personal news. First of all, my mum and I attended. She generously took me to this expensive conference in Saskatoon on Monday and Tuesday called Wachitawin Indigenous Engagement Conference. 2 days, and it was freaking amazing. I'm not going to spend too long talking about it, but it just reaffirmed and deepened the convictions that I have been forming within myself about Indigenous issues and how important it is to be uncomfortable with the privileges I have as a white Canadian guy, and gave me a little bit of an idea of what kind of work I might do or what kind of things I want to support to make a difference. Some of the speakers were just incredible. I would say the highlight of the conference for me was Chief Cadmus Delorme from the Cowessess Nation. He's a young, handsome man. The first time a lot of Canadians, especially white Canadians, heard of Chief Cadmus Delorme was in 2021 when a whole bunch of unmarked graves were discovered near the former Mariaville residential school on his territory. And he led a lot of national discussions at that time, and certainly I became aware of him then and have followed him. But to hear him speak live, he's a very humorous speaker, very passionate, very challenging speaker, and I wish to heck there was a publicly available video that I could link to of his speech on Monday. There isn't, and so apparently there won't be one. But I'm going to link to one that was, quite a similar version of this speech that you could watch, and I don't know if it will come across as powerfully just on video format as sitting in the room with this amazing man. I said to my mom and another woman sitting at our table immediately after, we were moved to tears and had laughed and cried, and beautiful, just such an incredibly powerful speech. And I said, made a very colonialist utterance. I said, he should be prime minister. Well, if he wants to, boy, he'd have my vote. And I think Canada will continue to be a shithole country until we have a high level, until the Indigenous peoples take their land back and run things, because we suck at everything. But goodness, it was a really colonialist comment to make, because, he's busy digging out of the shithole that we have put his people in. And rather than urge him to rescue us, we should support him in what he's doing, because he's doing transformative, really important work in a way that is with such a humorous, passionate, righteous zeal. He's my new hero. There was a whole bunch of other speakers, including a video presentation with Dr. Senator Justice Murray Sinclair, I think the first Indigenous member of the Senate in Canada, and a judge, and he was the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and his son, Negan Sinclair, is a journalist and professor in Winnipeg, and they weren't able to attend in person. Murray Sinclair's had COVID twice, and he didn't want to get it a third time, so they joined us in video format, a discussion between the two of them about the theme of the conference, which was bearing witness. And I wish I had my mum here, because she would be able to make an eloquent précis of what that means. But bearing witness is when we hear these stories from the survivors of the residential school. What does that mean? What obligations and transformations does that create in us and for us? That's all I'll say. But it's an important thing to reflect on when you hear about any injustice in the world. In my context, it's the crimes against humanity that we have perpetrated against Indigenous peoples. It's really, the more I read, the more disgusted I am at any shred of good reputation that Canada still enjoys, because it is unwarranted. So what do we do with that? And then how do we take action based on what we've heard? How do we honor what we've heard? How do we counter the lies and the stupidity of so many people in white society about Indigenous issues. I mean, I don't know if America or anywhere else in the world has this problem. I would be interested in comments about this. But Canadian media do not allow any comment sections on any news story about Indigenous issues because the vitriol, the depth, the extremity of the racism that just populates those comment sections is horrific. And so the comment sections are always turned off on Indigenous issues. I'm not sure if I agree with turning it off because I'm not sure that pretending that Canada is not dense with, and I use the term in both senses of the word, dense with white supremacist bigotry, that hiding that from ourselves I don't think is a good idea. But anyway, so bearing witness, what do we do with this? How do we honor this? I got lots of reflection from the various speakers at the conference, including a panel presentation on the second day of elderly survivors of the residential school system. And when I heard their stories of what they have done with it, they have not just borne witness, they lived it. And at whatever stage of their life, they transformed their lives and became healers. And that was incredibly powerful. So yeah, that's all I'll say. I wish you could have been there. It's the 8th Wichita conference, and I don't think they're going to continue them. If something else may take its place. But Wichita is a Cree and Saulteaux word which means to help each other to work together. I want to publicly thank my mother for affording me, literally, this privilege to be there and to take as much of this in as it was possible for me to take in. I will be processing what I heard, what I witnessed, for a long time to come. The other big news, personally, is Kenji and I had a Zoom call with our immigration lawyer just yesterday morning and reviewed and signed the final documents for the immigration application. So by this time, it has already been submitted to Ottawa, which means that probably within about 2 weeks, the immigration department here in Canada will provide an official receipt of the documents, which will certify also that it's a complete application, that everything that they need, they have. And at that point, we can make travel plans. And then it takes about 3 months to process. But basically, they don't ever reject one, I don't think. Maybe they do, but I don't think they will reject ours. There's one more wrinkle on Kenji's side, and I'm not going to speak about it here, that we'll find out within the next few weeks if that's going to make a significant delay. But if it doesn't, the best case scenario, Kenji should be here early in the winter. Not for Christmas. I don't think that's not feasible anymore, but early next year. So stay tuned. Anyway, it's really exciting. Kenji and I were both really excited. It almost felt like we got married again because it was something very, it was just a real transition. Okay, it's officially filed. This is going to be happening somewhat soon. So yay! That's my personal news. Here is the week in review. I've been busy, both here and on Patreon. If you didn't know I had a Patreon account, now you do. All the details are in the show notes. Here's the week in review. Here I am with my TBR for the just announced hottest readathon happening in December. This is Bob the Booker's readathon called In December. Did you get it? Indie pressed. Not indie pressed. Indie press in December. So Bob is inviting us all to read independent press books and small press books in the month of December. This is a tag that just went up a day or two ago from Sandy, the wonderful Sandy of Ms. Reads a Lot, who has read 901 books in the last 30 days. So she's made a tag called the 901 books tag. I'm completely botching the reason for her doing this tag, but that's because I want you to go and watch her original tag video and find out the truth, all right? Congratulations, Sandy. 901 books in 3 days. It's very impressive. Welcome to the Vlogmagram tag. Vlogmas started today, and here I am kind of launching, rebooting, relaunching. No. Here I am, coming from behind. Oh dear, I'm getting myself into linguistic trouble here. With an original tag that was co-created by Heather of Soggy Expat Book Nerd and I. Gonna have a Patreon Zoom party in December. I like this room. I wish you could hear me better. She crouched down beside her. I have to take your picture, Grandma. You know why? Because it's your birthday. This is my camera. I saved and saved to buy it. Isn't it a beauty? Let me just see here. Her grandmother reached out and put her fingers with their swollen knuckles around Josephine's wrist, patted her, then grasped her hard. Ow, Grandma, that hurts. She didn't ease up. Instead, she pulled the girl toward her, whispered in her ear. Ghosts. Sorry? That's what's in pictures. Ghosts. She let go and started to laugh wheezily, tilting back her head. Wide Awake by W.S. Gilbert. I am a remarkably good-looking, middle-aged bachelor. 20 years ago, I sunk all my property in an annuity, and on that annuity I live very comfortably. 10 years ago, it occurred to me that I might very likely marry, so I insured my life for £10,000. I am a man of a particularly affectionate disposition. This amiable tendency has led me into many difficulties in my time, not the least of which was an engagement to marry my cousin, Georgina Sparrow. This collected stories came out in 2020, and I just loved the virtuosity of this passage. Laurie Moore, I've read others of her short stories, not in this book, but elsewhere, and I liked some of them very much and didn't care for others, but that's the way it goes with short stories, isn't it? All right. I have finished 2 books. I'd hoped to finish 3, and I will finish that 3rd one, if not today, tomorrow, so that's fine, but I'm not going to talk about it here, because I didn't quite finish, and it was a book that the more I got into it, the deeper I got into it, and it wasn't about to rush or skim or anything. I don't have any bails, but I am going to start by telling you about the books that I put into the On Hold folder, which is a convenient place to put books that I want to forget about for a while, and so far I have never pulled a book that I put into the On Hold folder on my Goodreads. I've never pulled one of them back out and started reading, but I still am committed to. The ones I've put in this week will be among the first ones I pull out early in the new year. But I wanted to make room for In December, Bob the Booker's readathon about independent press books and small press books. So, very conveniently, here's what's disappeared off my current reading. I put 3 on hold. One was from Women in Translation, the one from Brazil, Her Mother's Mother's Mother and Her Daughters, by Maria José Silveira, translated from the Portuguese by Eric Becker. I was enjoying it, but it was just one that kept getting pushed to the back. I haven't picked it up in at least a month, and I just thought, I need to clear space. I will pick it back up and maybe start from the beginning or do a thorough review and enjoy it in the new year. I certainly was enjoying it, but it wasn't one that was calling my name urgently. So, that also was part of it. So that one's off my plate for the time being. Similarly, the 2 books I committed to reading in 2022 because of the Mooks and the Grapes podcast tag thing I did last year, I'm breaking my vow. I'm not going to finish either one of them, but I'm enjoying both of them. They were A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth and East of Eden by John Steinbeck. And both of them, A Suitable Boy I started last January, and I am only... The last time I picked it up was 3 months ago, and I was at the 10% mark. So, what's that? The first 2/3 or 3/4 of the year, I only got to 10%. So it was a book that I just wasn't picking up. It's fabulous, but that's the true story. That one's off. And I started much later in the year, East of Eden, and it was also fabulous. And I was doing it as an audio-text combo and very much enjoying it. And the last time I picked it up was 2 months ago, and I got to the 6% mark. So those are off. I will pick them back up in the new year. I don't know if it'll be right in the beginning of January, but early next year. And, well, actually, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm not going to make some flippant promises. I know none of you care about these promises, I don't think. Tell me if I'm wrong about that. But I'm going to stop being flippant about what I'm going to do in the future, because how often do I go back on my word? I want to talk for a couple minutes about tomes. I don't do well with tomes, so should I just stop trying to read them? I've got others that I haven't put on hold, that I also haven't picked up in, a month at least, if not longer. Maybe I'm just not cut out to read big books, because I don't like reading one book. Like there's a lot of readers. Roz of Scallydowning About the Books is the perfect example, and there's, I would say the majority of readers are like Roz, that they are reading one book at a time, maybe one print book and one audio book, but that's about it. And I think those kind of readers do better with tomes. But with me, I had my limit at 12 this year. And it was up to 27 at its most exuberant last year. So 12 was a real reduction. And I'm still, books are falling through the cracks. And the tomes, I just don't pick them up. And I don't want to change. I mean, I may try reading 10 books, but 3 years ago, I think I set the number at 6, and I got so bored of reading those same 6 books every day. No. So that didn't work. I think it was actually early 2021, so in abandoning it, I went off the deep end, and like I say, got up to almost 30 books at one time by the summer. So 27's too many. 6 is not enough. Maybe I'll try 10, but I'm just going to play it by ear with the tomes. Maybe I'm just going to avoid them. There's a lot of really fat books out there that I want to read, but I don't know how to fit them into my zany but perfectly appropriate way of being a reader in the world. They just keep falling off the edges. And all of the books that are in my on hold folder are tomes. And all of them I was enjoying, or I would have bailed if I hadn't been enjoying them. So, maybe I should have put all these thoughts into a discussion video. But anyway, if you have thoughts, I'd love to hear them. I think anything over 400 pages I don't do well with. Enough said. All right, so here's the 2 shorties that I finished this week. I started and finished this week. Inconvenient Skin by Shane Koyczan. This was a 5-star read for me, mostly because after finishing it and realizing that I didn't really get anything, the poem didn't really resonate with me at all. I didn't think it was that great. It was just a bunch of words that went with pictures, and I don't do well with, I'm not Lindy, where I can sink into how the words resonate with the images. It's not really my thing. But the text of it is on YouTube. And so then I listened to it while looking at the pictures, and it was a much more satisfying, much more fulfilling experience. So for me, poetry is an oral thing, and if I'm reading it, I don't usually get much. I think I'm just going to do a canvas mount of this cover, because it is a dust jacket that has the same thing underneath, because that picture needs to be on my wall. Anyway, and I did make a mistake, which Lindy very gently, as she said, a gentle correction. I said last week that this was written in Korean, translated into English, and that's not correct. It was written in English. Shane Koyczan, an indigenous poet, did write it in English, and then Solomon Rat translated it into Cree. I have also finished Maria Campbell's translation of Métis Stories of the Road Allowance People, the revised edition. Translated, and not only translated, but put on paper for the first time by Maria Campbell, the preeminent Métis goddess, Métis writer and activist and hero of mine. And the illustrations were by the Métis artist Sherry Farrell Rassett. And I love this. This one I didn't need the CD for. I don't have any way of playing the CD, but I would love to listen to it at some point if somebody sends me an old CD player. Ghetto blaster. But this was powerful. In stories in kind of a broken English, a colloquial English that would kind of be the way that some of the Métis elders in Maria Campbell's life would speak, was fascinating to read. It wasn't that difficult once you get into it. One of the things that's challenging is that there's no her or she pronouns. It's all he. And once you get that figured out, you're all set. I loved the tricksterous quality of several of these stories, and the way that These Métis stories made fun of settlers because, yeah, the political bent of the stories, the Métis history that was potted within the stories. It was really fantastic. And there's a foreword by another one of my beloved former profs, Ron Markin. He was the chair of the English department when I was there in the early 90s, and one of my very most favorite profs. And he and Maria Campbell are friends. She was on the faculty that year that I was there, or one of the years that I was there as the creative writing instructor. And he has written a foreword, making some fabulous connections. His area, Ron Markin's, he's retired now, was Irish literature, and he made some fascinating comparisons between the anti-colonialist bent of and colloquial diction in Irish literature compared to Métis literature. That was really quite a joy to read, and brought him right back into the room with me with his gleaming eyes and mischievous smile as I was reading it. So yeah, this was fantastic. So I will never be done reading Indigenous fiction and nonfiction, but I am going to step back from it at least for a week and focus on in December titles. I do have one very short Indigenous novella on my in December TBR, but I'm not starting that this week. Oh, there is one that's an Indigenous issues oriented book that I will be starting this week as part of in December, and I'm not going to spend time describing the books that I just told you about a few days ago on my in December TBR. I'll just tell you that I'm starting them. So the first one is the replacement pseudo-buddy read with Eric Carl Anderson. It's a novel from China, Cocoon by Zhang Yueran, translated from the Chinese by Jeremy Tiang. Zhang Yueran is a female Chinese writer, and she's apparently one of the most exciting new Chinese writers. I had never heard of her, and I'm looking forward to diving in. Eric and I are not going to bail on this, and we're going to have a Zoom chat in mid-December. I don't know that I would get it edited until the new year, but that's the timeline for this, and it's fairly chunky, but it's not a tome. 325 pages. I can do it in 2 weeks, can't I? And I talked about this one. I have been wanting to read this ever since I got it late last year, and I finally will. The Stromness Dinner by Peter Benson. More details about this are in my TBR video. And Peg found it on Scribd after watching my TBR video, and she's already reading it. Knowing Peg, she's already finished it. Peg, what did you think? Peg, if you want to tell me what you thought and you liked it, I'd love to hear from you. If you didn't like it, don't tell me till after I finished. Is that okay? I will be interviewing Margaret Macpherson in the middle of December about this memoir. I was at the book launch in Saskatoon for this a few weeks ago. Tracking the Caribou Queen, Memoir of a Settler Girlhood by Margaret Macpherson. She was a powerful speaker. I can't wait to read it. And I have 2 other buddy reads starting this week with 2 of my buddy read besties. 2022 almost slipped by without me reading another Elizabeth Jane Howard novel. Well, no, I'm sneaking in just under the wire her 3rd novel, The Sea Change. And this is a buddy read with Leah from Calgary. She and I started with Howard's 2nd novel, The Long View. That was published in 1956. And we loved it so much, we decided to go back to the beginning and read her stuff in chronological order. So then last year, we read The Beautiful Visit, 1950. And now this is her 3rd novel. She did put out a collection of 6 ghost stories that were 3 by her and 3 by Robert Aikman. And we did buddy read one of them, and I wasn't a fan. So we're not going to read that one. I think Leah read the whole collection herself, but I gave that one a pass. But this one, The Sea Change, is 1959. The male protagonist here is a famous playwright. His wife Lillian is sickly and embittered. Oh, that sounds fabulous. And I was a huge fan of Michelle Gallen's debut novel, Big Girl, Small Town, which I did as an audio text combo. And I didn't buddy read that with Heidi of My Reading Life, but she separately... Did I? I don't think so. But she separately read it and loved it. And so we're buddy reading her 2nd novel together, starting this week, Factory Girls, just hot off the press. Came out in the UK earlier, but it's just available now in Canada. I think this is the UK edition. Yeah. We're doing this as an audio text combo. It's a different narrator, but also from the preview sounds just as good as the famous Dairy Girl actor, I don't remember her name, that narrated the first one. So This has another smart-mouthed, filthy-minded Irish protagonist, Maeve, set in her shitty wee town, according to the synopsis, in Northern Ireland. That's all I need to know. I love Big Girl Small Town. I'm expecting to love this one as well. Now, I said I was reading one book that I didn't want to hurry to finish. I expect to finish it over the weekend perhaps. And if that happens, I am going to also pick up this homoerotic novella by the author of The Go-Between, L.P. Hartley's The Harness Room. I have talked about this and played with this man's bee-stung lips while I was talking about it for a long time. So I'm not going to say another word about it here, but I'm just going to finally read the damn thing. Oh, I'm so excited about starting all these new books. It feels like Christmas. So Merry Christmas, and don't forget to do the Vlogmagram tag. You don't have to wait to be tagged. I'm going to put them out almost pretty much daily for the next while, so I'm going to tag as many of yous as I can, but you should take your own initiative to get it started. It's fun. It's fun. Thanks for watching.